Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tech Leader Lunch and Learn. And thanks for coming along and spending your time with us and putting up with all the technical glitches that are happening right at the beginning. So what we're going to be talking about today is transforming and growing great teams. Now, I've been a leader in tech for many years now, and there were always two things on my mind. One, how did I help the people in my team to be the best that they could be? How did I grow my team or replace those that left with top folks? And so that's what Bob and I are going to talk about today. How to raise the impact of your existing team and how to bring in people that will level up your team. So we're going to split this session into two parts today. So the first part is going to be me talking about how you make your existing team more influential. And the second part we're going to be talking about is how to become a brilliant hiring manager. So, Bob, do you want to introduce yourself just for a second time now that everybody can hear you?
Don't worry, I can still hear your beautiful voice earlier. Hi everyone, great to be here. We've got some great content, so I hope this is all useful for you all.
Yeah, brilliant. Now, let me talk to you about questions and answers. So we're going to break this into two sections. At the end of question one, at the end of section one, are any questions that are in the chat window, which you've already found to tell us that there was no sound. So keep using that chat window. So at the end of section one, we'll just have a look through and I'll go through any questions that are there. And then after Bob's section, in the second section, then we'll have another little look and go through and answer any questions are there. So I'll be honest, I'm not actively monitoring the chat right now. I cannot multitask like that. There is one thing I can do, speak or listen and read. I can't do both. So I'm going to show you, and I think this is where we got to last time, this weird photo. And you all must have been thinking, what the heck is this photo that Ben has popped up? Well, this is a photo that to me represents my career. And the reason I pop it up is it's me hitting yet another wall. As I'm trying to get a project deployed or trying to get a customer to buy something or trying to get a senior leader to do one of the things I want them to do, and you hit wall after wall, sponsor after sponsor, stakeholder after stakeholder that you need to influence to get stuff done. Often the technology is pretty straightforward. I'm not going to say it's simple, but I'm going to say it's pretty straightforward. The challenge is managing all the sponsors and stakeholders that you need to actually get something done. And not only have you got to do that as an individual, as a leader, but you've got your dream team that you're taking with you that may or may not look like something like this, that have got their own strengths, their own weaknesses, their own eccentricities, their own way of doing things. And so what I'm going to be talking about is how you take those people and how you can work with them to make them more effective when they're working with customers and working with stakeholders and working with sponsors. Now, hopefully, the stuff that I'm going to show you is going to make them a bit more influential so that people will actually listen to your team. People will have confidence in the position and the advice that your team are giving, that people will act on the things that your team have said. So hopefully more influential. Secondly, hopefully they're going to be a bit more memorable. Now, I'm not saying you turn up at every customer meeting and stick a cocktail stick through your tongue, but this is about people remembering you, about people remembering your team, remembering their message, about people not instantly forgetting the things that your team have said, about people taking the message to heart and wanting to do what your team have recommended. And ultimately that leads us to being more successful, right? Whatever success looks like for you and looks like for your team, whether that is convincing a customer to use your professional services, whether it's selling them a product, whether it's convincing an internal stakeholder to take on a project, whatever success looks like for you, hopefully you'll be more successful. And so I'm going to give you this little framework that I've talked about for years now, which is a framework that you can use in one-to-ones, you can with your team, that you could use in meeting planning sessions where you were planning for the meetings and the presentations that you might be having with those stakeholders. So that's what I'm going to go through for probably the next 10 minutes or so, something like that. So the little framework that I want to give you today is what I call the ORAN framework. So ORAN, of course, is an acronym, and it stands for this. It stands for audience, objective, remembered, emotion, and next steps. And I'll give you a download with access to this, so feel free to jot it down, but don't feel you have to. Now, what I use this framework for is to act like a North Star when I'm planning a presentation or planning a meeting with a customer, with a stakeholder. So what I want to do is unpack each of these things. It's not a specific flow that you run through. It's a thing that you do before you start creating your message, before you start creating your content, before you start getting your team to create their message and content. And I just jot it down on a piece of paper, but I'll also give you a Word doc template that you can use if you prefer doing that. So I'm going to unpack audience, objective, remembered, emotion, and next steps, because I think these are all important things that you need to think about. So the first thing when you're about to influence people is to really think about the audience. Who is going to be in the audience? Because actually, when you're presenting and when your team are presenting, it's not about the presenter. It's about the people that are listening. It's not about the stories that the presenter's got or the slides that the presenter's got or the whatever. It's about whether it's going to be valuable for the people that are listening. And if it is, that'll determine whether it maybe drives some action and has some influence. So the audience is the absolute centre of any presentation or when you're in customer meetings, things like that. And if that's the case, it's best if you can know your audience. Because if you know your audience, you can be relevant to your audience. And if you're relevant to your audience, you can give value to your audience. So what I do, take a little pen, jot down who's going to be in my audience. Now, if it's only a little meeting and I know exactly who they're going to be, and we know all the foibles, all the ways that they like to listen to things, the ways they don't like to listen to things, brilliant. We can just jot that down. Maybe it's a bigger audience. Maybe you're speaking at a conference, your team's speaking at a conference or at a user group or something like that. In which case, what are the sort of personas that are going to be in there? And just jot them down. Because then as you and your team make decisions about what content you're going to share and not share, you can make sure that it's relevant to that audience. You don't want deep techie stuff to a bunch of senior leaders, and you don't want a load of marketecture wishy-washy stuff to a load of software engineers that are going to be implementing stuff. So you can start to then think about bringing in really relevant content. So that's the first thing. A stands for audience. Now, second thing I then jot down is objective. But not only do I jot down my objective, but I try and empathise with the audience and jot down their perspective, what their objective is going to be. So, for example, maybe I'm trying to position a solution that we're going to implement for our customers, right? And I'm going to jot that down, right? The objective of our session is really that they're convinced that they want to proceed with us doing this thing for them. But also, I want to sit down and jot down, but what are they sat here? Are they sat here going, I can't wait until Ben tells me about this thing? And what is that? Because if we can empathise and jot that down, then again, as we choose the content, we can choose the content that is going to match the audience objective. And hopefully will therefore be more valuable to them. So again, I take my pen, jot down what's the objective of the audience, why are they listening to me, and what's our objective. And both of them are fine, and they might be different and probably are different, but at least if you've got clarity on them, then you can make better decisions about how you're going to position some of the key themes. So we've done audience, we've done objective. The next thing I like to talk to the team about is, right, what is it that I want the audience to remember? It's not 111 things. It's not 225 things. I'm not going to overwhelm them like a power hose, just spraying information and knowledge and overwhelm at them. What are the few things that I want them to remember? Now, if your team haven't got clarity on it, if you haven't got clarity on it, then there's no way that the people that are listening to your team have got any clarity on it either. So think about what it is that you want them to remember. What is the key thing? And you've got this kind of key message. What's wonderful is if you can say that in a sentence. What is the thing that you can say in a sentence? So if I think about it from this session, me talking to you, my key message is that I want your team to be more influential and memorable with their stakeholders, and that they can do that by using this Aurum framework. There it is in one sentence. Everything else I'm saying is now supporting that with key themes. So, no more than 5 key themes. So I've got Aurum, AOREN, that's 5. I'll be honest, 3 is the magic number. So if you can put 3 key themes that support that kind of key message that you've got, that's a winner. People will remember that a lot easier. So get clarity what it is that you want people to remember from your team's session, and make sure that they have clarity on that. So audience, objective, remembered. Next one, emotion. Now I specifically call that out because I think it's very rare for us in the technical world to plan a session going, right, how do we want the people we're talking to feel? I think we talk a lot about logic. I think we talk a lot about rationale. We talk a lot about detail and data and how we're going to do it. But I don't think we very often sit down and think, right, how are we going to make that stakeholder feel? Do we want our team to bore them? Do we want our team to overwhelm them? I suggest not. Do we want them to think, God, that team, God, those people, they know what they're talking about, and I trust them to do the thing that they're saying that they can do. Maybe that's more what we want them to feel. Now, there is a brilliant quote. It's this one from Maya Angelou. It says, people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel. Now, if we can create an emotional connection and get our team to create emotional connection with people, actually what that does is it gets more parts of the brain firing whilst they're listening. So it gets them not only to have the logical and rational parts of the brain firing, but also the emotional parts. And if you can get the whole bit of the brain firing, and there's been loads of neuroscience and studies on this, actually that helps the listener with problem solving. It ramps up their cognitive processing, and it helps them with recall. So by talking to them in a way that not only is rational and logical, but also creates an emotional connection, and often anecdotes, examples, stories are great ways to do that and to bring that alive to life. So if we can get our teams talking like that, then actually we're going to be remembered a lot more, and we're going to have a lot more impact with those sponsors that we're trying to influence. So I consciously pull out that E and think about how do we front and center think about how we're going to make an emotional connection with people. Then the final thing that I like to jot down is next steps. And so what I mean by next steps is what's going to happen after this meeting, after this presentation. Because the presentation is never the end. Right? When your team are talking to the customer, that's not the end. The end is when the solution is deployed, when value is being realized. That's the end. And so often meetings and presentations, they're just stepping stones along the way. And yet often we forget about what's the strategy for after the presentation, after the meeting. And the strategy suddenly becomes, I'll send you the deck. I'll send you this 40 megabyte file that's a slide deck, and that's going to be our strategy, which of course isn't a great strategy, is it? So it's thinking about before the meeting what we want the next steps to be, that we want them to go and present this to somebody else, or we want to get approval to do this next step, or whatever the thing that we want them to do next is. Now, sometimes you know exactly what those next steps are going to be. And so you can just make those next steps as frictionless and as easy as possible that move you forward. Sometimes you don't know. And sometimes that's the purpose of the meeting, like the presentation / meeting, the present meeting, I sort of sometimes call them. And so if that's the case, we just want to make sure that we're ring fencing time and that your team are driving in those meetings. Right, what are the actions? Who's doing them? When are they doing them by? And making sure that that is ring fenced for the last 5-10 minutes and that that is not forgotten, because that is how you really drive that action. So this is a little framework, and I've worked with loads of people for years doing this. So whenever we're thinking about how we're going to influence people, when we're going to present to people, when we're going to get in high value meetings, jot down on a piece of paper and a template who's in the audience, what are their objective, and what's our objective, what is it we want them to remember, how are we going to connect with them emotionally, and how are we going to drive action. And then you can use that as you choose which slides, which diagrams, which demos, which stories, which key messages. As you're deciding all of that content, you can keep referring back to this little framework. And if it matches, brilliant, it goes in. If it doesn't match, we're brutal. We cut it out. We keep everything we're saying super relevant, super valuable. And that's how we can be really influential and really memorable and really relevant to the people that we're trying to influence. Now, I'm going to finish there. What I'm just going to say is this is just a tiny little piece of what I call the technical storytelling program. And I spend a lot of times working with teams in tech on how they elevate these skills, right? How they become more relevant, how they create really compelling content, and how they deliver it with excellence. And that's what I spend my time doing all the time. So if this sort of thing you think is interesting, give me a shout. Now, we're going to share with you at the end, and this is the QR code, and it'll come up later. We'll share it again after Bob's, and we'll share it with you in an email as well, where you can go and download that template for the Auran template, where you can connect with us on LinkedIn, and actually you'll be able to watch back. We're recording this, and you'll be able to watch that back. So with that, I'm going to move to Q&A. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Bob, I'm going to ask you, are there any questions that have come in at all?
No, none at all so far. So guys, if you've got anything that you want to ask Ben about that, please put it in the chat now, or if you think of something in the next 15 minutes or so whilst I'm doing my presentation, put it in the chat and Ben can cover it off at the end. But maybe, Ben, you've just articulated everything so well. And there's
well,
no
I imagine that's exactly what it is. No, if you've got anything, or you've got any objections, and you go, Ben, this wouldn't work because of that, or this, or that, pop them in the chat. What I'll do then is I'll keep monitoring the chat for a while. Hold on, we've just had one come in from Matt. So let me just read this question. If your team is naturally introverted, how might they overcome some fear of doing this? Well, that's a great question. So the first thing I want to say is I have seen brilliant presentations, brilliant meetings from introverts. Sometimes we get in kind of these limiting self-beliefs that if you're extrovert, you're great at this, and if you're introvert, you're really bad at this. And I would completely swap that around and say, often the people that say the least say the most interesting things. So with that in mind, there's a few things that we can do. It's going to take more bravery, right? So we need to build that bravery, and we need to take a bit of a leap. But also there's all sorts of things we can do. A lot of it's in the prep. So we can prep hard beforehand and use some good frameworks to make sure that we've got a bit of confidence, that we've got a good message, that we're happy and we know what we're going to say. We can practice it, so we can get used to saying it out loud. We can do things like that. And then there's loads of stress reduction techniques, breathing, visualization. there's things like that you can do that really help. And in fact, what I might do is I might point you to, there's a podcast episode I did. I run the Tech World Human Skills podcast. There's an episode on there called The Reluctant Script, not The Reluctant Scripter, The Reluctant Presenter. And I got my wife on the podcast who she's a proper introvert and hates doing all of this sort of stuff. And we talked together about how she overcomes it, what she does. So what I'd just finish off and say with that one is, introverts can do some of the best presentation meetings that I've ever seen, and there's techniques that we can use to really highlight and showcase those people so that they do a fabulous job, but it does take some bravery.
Do you know what I think is interesting, Ben? I consider myself to be an introvert, yet here I am on a webinar. And I was listening to what you were saying. When I saw that question, I thought I wouldn't know how to answer that. But actually hearing you say it, I do a lot of those things. I prep. I've got lots of notes here that I can fall back on if I suddenly get a bit nervous or I can't remember what I'm about to say. And I started little and I built up to this. I started putting little videos on LinkedIn, little 30-second snippets. And it's about content that I know. Yeah. So I feel more comfortable talking about that. And I think anyone who's in that situation for the first time or looking to build upon and get further, prep and baby steps, to get up to that level and build yourself some confidence.
Yeah. Brilliant. Right. Well, no more questions that I can see. So do you want to share your screen, Bob? And just while you're sharing the screen, I'll just tee up, I was a hiring manager for years at Microsoft, and getting top people in was one of the most important things I ever did. And so this is such an important topic. So, Bob, really excited. So I'm going to hand over to you to talk about becoming a brilliant hiring manager.
Lovely. Yeah, thanks, Ben. Thanks for your presentation as well. It's really useful. And I think that framework's important because I think if you have it leads nicely into this. And if you've got a good framework that you can work upon when building your teams, it's definitely helpful. So yes, hi everyone, I'm Bob Barth, Director at Mexa Solutions. I've spent almost 20 years in IT recruitment. 10 of those have been running my own IT recruitment business, Mexa Solutions. I help businesses and senior leaders maximize the hiring process to make sure they're attracting, hiring and retaining their best talent. And from this webinar, you should be able to hire better people, do it more quickly, all while improving your brand reputation in the market, and understanding how your brand reputation impacts your hiring, because we're exploring that relationship between the hiring style and the brands. This could actually be really useful, even if you're not hiring right now, but you've got plans in 6, 9, 12 months. Understanding that relationship right now is going to be really useful for when you next come to hire. And also, at the end of the presentation, there's going to be a very interesting offer for you as well. So more on that in a little bit. Let's start, though, by thinking about two questions. What impact does your recruitment process have on your company brand? And what impact does your company brand have on your recruitment process? Because they both influence each other. A good process supports good, bad amplifies bad, and today is all about understanding that relationship between them both and how you can improve it. And what I think is interesting is that many managers have never actually been trained on interviewing or hiring. Some of them just copy what they've seen previously. Some are copying bad habits, and quite often they don't have any idea how their actions in the recruitment process is affecting their company brand. And I had this once recently, about a month or so back, with a newly appointed head of IT. He was previously a senior engineer. He had no experience with the recruitment process or what good looked like. And he was very busy being new to the role as well, but he needed to hire a cybersecurity engineer, 34 grand. So it was already a really low salary. But I managed to find someone who was really good. She was interested, but he took 3 weeks to come back and feedback on her CV. He then had 2 rounds of interviews, so actually that's not bad. But that interview process actually took 2.5 weeks. And then it took him a further 3 weeks to make an offer, which she verbally accepted. But then, due to internal processes and getting things signed off, generating paperwork, HR took a further 4 weeks to send out that paperwork. And it was at that point that she declined the offer. She completely lost any interest. She lost faith in the company and the role, and it was painful all around. But now, more importantly, that company's brand and their recruitment process is being talked about negatively. And today, it's about making sure that you don't repeat little things like that. So we're going to walk through what a first-class recruitment process actually looks like. But first, before we do that, just a quick overview on the market, because I'm sure you'll probably want to hear what's going on in the market at the moment. So obviously we have COVID, and then after COVID, there was this post-COVID boom, and it was crazy. Every company was trying to hire. There was too many jobs and not enough people. Yeah, pretty crazy year. But then 2023 hit, and everyone thought a recession was coming. Interest rates started going through the roof. The cost of living was going up rapidly. Some of the big companies were starting to make redundancies, and everything started to really slow down. But it's been gradually getting better since then, and things have started to return not to that level, but to a to a new normal again. And there's more jobs coming through now. So yes, there are lots of candidates on the market at the moment, and yes, some companies are even being quite selective about that next person that they hire because they can, because there's lots of candidates. Doesn't actually mean that hiring is getting any easier, because many candidates are just applying out of desperation, not because they're aligned to the role. Like you would, if you're out of work, you would, try and apply for anything to pay the bills. But the companies that are winning right now are the companies that have got an A-star recruitment process. They attract, they impress, they move fast, and they retain good people. And the biggest shift is this: candidates now expect you to tell them why they should choose your role. So I say focus on what you can control, because every company has different processes. HR might be involved, and there might be some parts of the process that you just cannot change. So focus on what you can control, and always roll out what I like to call the red carpet treatment. So every candidate is a future ambassador for your brand, whether they get the job or not. And if a manager is only half invested in the recruitment process, then it's just not going to work, or at least it won't be effective. Everyone's busy, and they're usually too busy because they're a person down and you need to hire, but you've got to make time for this. And that way, you'll only need to do this once. So if you think of the process as a funnel, we got our job adverts at the top, which is obviously where we get all our candidates from. We're gonna look at that one first. This is a whole webinar in itself, so I'm going to do a light touch here, but we could spend ages talking about how to craft a really good advert. But the two most important points are: make sure you put the salary in, because it will increase the number of applications, but it will increase the number of relevant applications, and it will save you time overall by not talking to irrelevant people. Obviously, we can just park the debate around why companies don't advertise the salary, but we just have to remember that jobs with salaries means that they'll get more relevant people applying, meaning you'll spend less time screening irrelevant people. And also, you've got to speak to the candidates why. What's in it for them. And you do that by asking yourself, why should someone want to take this role? And once you've got that answer, then ask yourself, why is that important to them? And then once you got that answer, you've then got your angle that you can lean on in your job adverts, and you can talk about at interviews, and you can when you're discussing and selling to people. Interviews. So you've got to make it personal. This whole process has got to be a personal process, and doesn't feel like it's just HR application process. So do things like send out the invitations yourself with a personal note. Don't let the recruiter do it if you're using a recruiter. Don't let HR do it. Send them yourself and put a personal note in there say that you're looking forward to meeting them or whatever it might be. Who does your first screen? Is it you? Is it the HR? Is it someone in your team? I'm a big believer is it should be the hiring manager because they're best positioned to be able to sell the role. You can make it even just a very quick 30-minute intro call before the full interview. Don't grill them. Talk very openly, talk at a high level, and make sure you're selling and wowing the individual. But if HR are doing it, or they've got to do it, then fine. But it's harder for them to understand the role from your position, so it's harder for them to sell the role. HR play a very important part when it comes to this whole process. I just don't believe it's best served here at the initial stage. So they just need to know what good looks like and make sure they're selling the role and selling the brand, so that every candidate comes away feeling wowed, and they should know the company and they should know that they want to come and work there. Feedback. So this for me is a big one because whether it's positive or negative, you should give full and detailed feedback, and HR or the recruiter should be passing it on. If it's negative, of course, explain why. That way they won't feel that they've invested time or wasted time in interviewing and not hearing about any specifics. If it's positive, tell them. Don't just say, yeah, we're moving you to the second stage. Tell them what you liked. Candidates want to feel good about themselves. And if you're doing this and other companies aren't, it's going to make you stand out. So tell them what you like, tell them why you liked it, and it could make the difference. And all of these things, they're starting to improve your company brand, the external brand that your company has. Because if a friend turns around to you and says, "Oh, I'm interviewing at XYZ company," and another friend replies, "Oh no, don't do it. I interviewed there, had the worst experience ever. Be very, very careful." Or the friend turns around and says, "Oh wow, you're so lucky. I interviewed there. I didn't get the job, but they were brilliant. I really, really liked them, and hopefully I'll get to work there someday." So it makes a huge difference, and feedback improves your brand instantly, and improves your chances of securing them as well. So the recruitment process as a whole. So what does good look like? What should a good recruitment process look like? So two-stage interview process is standard, but if you get it down to one, that's brilliant. If you can streamline it in that way. You've got to move fast. CV feedback should be within 24 hours. The interview should be booked within the next 48 hours, and the offer should come the same day as the final interview. And your HR paperwork should go out the same day within 24 hours of that of the offer. It's a quick and a fast process, and it looks good and it feels good, as opposed to if you've got 3, 4, 5 stages or even longer. There's long gaps between these stages waiting for feedback. Like that example I told you about earlier where they were waiting long gaps between CV, interview and offer. She just got turned off. If you need to repeatedly rearrange interviews, I understand some things need to take priority, but recruitment is important, and you need to give it a lot of attention. Technical tests as well. Not saying they're not needed, but you should always put thought into your technical test. Does it need to be a technical test? Can it be a pair programming task? Can it be a scenario walkthrough? Can it be here's a task, spend 5 minutes just thinking about it, and then we'll go through it collaboratively together, because that shows them what it's like to work with you rather than being interrogated by you at the interview process. The offer stage, I like this stage. You've got to make it unforgettable, and I'm a big believer in making the offer very clear, make it a smooth process, make it personal, and offer people what you feel they're worth. Don't start low and try to get a bargain and work your way up, because that just turns people off, especially if they've got another offer on the table and they've got to weigh up the two. Best foot forward usually wins, and if they don't accept it, then fine, you've put your best foot forward. If they accept, send them a message, call them, email, text them, congratulate them personally and say thanks, really pleased you accepted. I can't wait to have you on board. Do you or does your HR have an offer pack that gets sent out? An offer pack of detailing the offer, the benefits, the role, details about any bonuses or any commission, um, next steps, what to expect from here. Between now and day one is a long time. What happens on day one, week one, month one? Put it all together. That adds a lot of value, because it's important to remember that candidates are still assessing your role long after the interview, long after the offer, long after the paperwork, and during the pre-onboarding. Um, all of these things can still influence their final choice, because I I had a situation a few weeks ago where a company approached me. They were a small business. They were recommended to me. They didn't have many staff, about 5 or 10 staff. Um, didn't have any benefits really, basic benefits package, and they couldn't compete with the bigger brands out there. Um, but I got them a CV straight away. It's someone I knew who was on the market, and from CV to job offer was a 3-day turnaround. The candidate was just blown away, and they beat the bigger brands simply by nailing some of the basics in the recruitment process, and wowing the candidate during the process. Pre-onboarding stage. Okay, so this is where most companies lose people, and it's where it's most painful to lose people. So what is pre-onboarding? It's the stage between being offered and when they start, which is usually a month. Sometimes it's longer. And you got to remember, these people might still be interviewing, and you might not be aware of it. Or at least they are still being approached by people, by recruiters like me, and will try and tempt them away. I've quite often phoned people up saying, "I've just seen your CV, or been recommended to you, and I've got a great role." And they say, "Oh, I'm really sorry, I've just accepted a role." And I say, "Great, okay, tell me about it." "Oh, okay, it's 4 days a week in the office, it's 40 grand. Okay, it's a certain type of company. Okay, well, what's interesting is I've got a role which is paying 10 grand more. You're only going to the office 1 day a month, and actually it's with a new tech startup who've just had a round of investment, and they're expecting 200% growth in the next 2 years." All of a sudden, that sounds really interesting, and they've got nothing to lose by having that conversation. So this pre-onboarding process is so important, because the more you wow them, the less chance they're going to slip away and accept something else. So how do you do that? So you've got to ensure that they feel part of the business before day one, before they start. So regular contacts. You could book in any early training. You could discuss what tech requirements they need if they're working from home. Discuss projects, or give them some technical reading or prep to look at before they start. Invite them to socials. Tell them about the business. What updates are there? What news? What other hires are they making? What investments have they had? What acquisitions are they in the process of going through? I've got one client that sends welcome videos to the team, and every week it's a video from a different person, and from influential people as well, like the MD or the head of HR, team leader. They're all involved, and they send a welcome video um, once a week, and it just keeps that excitement alive. So, yeah, your brand, every step of this process shapes your reputation, and poor practice costs you candidates, but it also deters future ones from applying, and it damages your brand. Whereas an excellent process, it strengthens your brand, and you don't have to spend any money on marketing to do this. It's what you're doing during the interview process. Just a quick one here on internal versus external hiring. Um, I'm a big believer. I don't think you should interview anyone externally until you've explored all of your internal options. And definitely don't run them side by side, because otherwise you'll just demotivate people. You'll alienate your existing staff. You might have someone sat there going, "Hi, I'm a, I want to apply for that role, but you're comparing me to other people. You said you want to offer me career progression or whatever it might be, but you're you're alienating people, and it could force people to leave if they don't see progression, or they don't feel that you've got their best career progression interests in mind. Takeaway points: best practice is definitely not always common practice, and most companies think they're doing it well, but few of them actually are. There's definitely things that most companies can improve in their recruitment process. I'm a big believer in training, and a lot of managers probably need training on interviewing or the recruitment process. And if you pair that up with what Ben's just been talking about, how you can influence people and training around communication, it makes them dangerously good at their job, and you'll be able to attract better people that way. I think each of these areas could have been a webinar on its own, really. So you'll probably have loads of questions. Ask them now. If you want to take any offline, then the QR code is right here. That takes you to the landing page where you can connect with Ben and me, and we'll have the recording and the slides available as well. So I'm going to stop sharing. Ben, have we had any questions come through?
We have, yeah. I've got a question here. So I've got a question from MB, who says, and this is now thinking about, you were talking about alternatives to, I think, the tech interviews that you were talking about. And it says, do you think it's better to talk through a task together rather than letting the candidate have half an hour to solve it alone?
It depends on the task. If it's a more of a business type task rather than a technical development task, then yes, give them a bit of time and you can talk through it, because you can see what their communication style is going to be like. They're going to be a BA or a PM probably if they're working on a business task, and you want to see how their thought process as they work things through, and how they're going to then communicate with stakeholders. If it's a technical task,
and this is more
I
technical.
think
Yeah, MB's just popped in chat. Yeah, more of a technical side.
I was going to say technical tests are great for junior people. Senior people get a little put off sometimes, I feel. If they've got 10, 20 years of development experience, I think there's better ways of assessing people rather than saying, right, sit down, here's an half hour coding exercise I want you to do. You can do that for a junior. I think for a senior, it's probably better to talk through a scenario and understand their thought process and how they apply certain principles or whatever it might be. And then you're not insulting someone who's got 10, 20 years worth of experience by asking them to do a basic task.
Can I add some comment in here as well, Bob? So when I was at Microsoft, I spent 20 years hiring. 10 of them, I reckon, I helped. 10 years helping people, as in I wasn't the hiring manager, but I was part of the interview team. And 10 years where I was probably the decision maker. I can't think how many interviews I've done, thousands over the years. But just to that point, and we always did a variety of technical exercises in different ways. When I left Microsoft, we were after cloud solution architects was what we were looking for. But a thing that changed was a realization I had is I don't want to hire people that are the best at doing interviews. I want to hire the people that are going to be best at doing the job. And back in the day, we would have a very strict, rigid structure that everybody followed. I think I changed my perspective as I got a bit more seasoned to think, how can we find the best out of these people? So, for example, sometimes it's lovely to sit down, ask them questions, get how they think about things, ask them those technical questions, and see how their mind works, see what principles they've got, see how they make leaps. Some people, perhaps maybe more introverted in nature, going back to that, just love a bit of quiet time to just sit down and think about something and go, I just need to give this some good thought. And so if there's any way that you can be more accommodating for different types of people, you might find candidates that are better at doing the job rather than candidates that are better doing interviews. What's your thoughts on that, Bob?
Yes, I agree. Because you want to bring out the best in people. You don't want to put them under any undue pressure. But also, interestingly, I don't think the best person for the job is always the best person that ticks every single box or who has the best CV, because they might have loads of competency skills that you can open up and find out about at the interview, and also someone who ticks every single box from the job description is probably going to get bored very quickly. They can already do everything. What are they going to learn? Where are they going to go and progress? They'll probably be looking for a job again in 3 or 6 months, maybe slightly longer. But someone who matches 75-80% of the job description, technically, but has some great competency skills and can you can teach. It's easier to teach the tech skills than it is to teach the other side. I think this is the best way of putting it.
Mm. So MB's just come back and commented on what we were talking about, and said so give them the option for either. Then maybe whether they do that the code with, or you're giving them time before, or you're asking questions, and I think it seems to me maybe it's about the scale of your challenge. Sometimes there must be consistency. For example, when we were doing a graduate program and you've got thousands of candidates coming through, you need a consistent experience for people so that you can be fair with. But perhaps if you've got more of that agility, it's more of a unique role. I personally now would be up for being very flexible. And if you're doing that 30-minute opening call, which I loved that you were talking about there, Bob, to really try and sell the role to them, convince them it'd be brilliant to come and work, and be part of your team, you can maybe sound them out a little bit and get some ideas on, is this the type of person that wants to come in and do a technical thing, or would they like a bit of time to think about it first? And if we go with the mindset of we're looking for the best person to hire, not the best person that's good at interviews, that might make you choose a bit more flexibility in what you want to do.
Yeah, I agree. And some devs or some techs that probably don't mind doing technical tests at any level, but I think generally, yes, you can give them the option. But I'd say generally, the more experienced they are, less heavy on the tech tests, exam style tests, and more collaborative paired programming or scenario walkthroughs.
Yeah. Can I ask another question? The whole salary piece. So imagine I'm a hiring manager, right? And I need somebody to come in and work for me. And I'm just going to use the simple, I'm going to say principal, senior, junior, right? So I'm just going to use 3 simple levels. I could do with either a senior or a principal, right? I've got budget for either a senior or a principal. Both could do. If we've got a principal, brilliant, there's a way I could go forward. If there's a senior, brilliant, there's a way I could go forward. They are different pay structures, right? So a principal's going to get more than a senior. Would you craft 2 roles, one advertising a principal and one a senior, and put the appropriate pay in there? Would you put a range in there? How would you cover that sort of scenario?
If the range was actually quite wide, for example, 60 to 90, that doesn't sound like a good thing to put on an advert. I don't mind ranges if it's 60 to 70. So in that situation, I'd create 2. If it was, if it was a smaller range, I'd put the range on there. Because otherwise, someone will look at it and go, maybe they don't know what they want if the salary is that wide, and it might put people off.
So you'd go 2 separate jobs, even though there's only one role at the end. You go 2 separate jobs.
If it was a wide salary range, yeah. If it was only 10k difference between the jobs, I'd probably just do one advert.
Yeah, and pop them all on. Okay. Right, I'm just looking in the chat. I can't see any more questions, actually. So I think we are done. So, what I just want to say is firstly, thank you so much, Bob. I thought that was really useful, really interesting, and such an important set of skills that people, they just start doing hiring. They don't think about learning about how to hire really well. So I thought that was really valuable. So thank you for that, Bob.
Thank you. Yours was really useful as well.
Thank you. So, what I just want to say, any final words from you, Bob?
Merry Christmas. Don't drink too much.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the Lunch and Learn. Hope you had a turkey and stuffing or something suitably festive. And get in touch, and we'll speak to you all soon. It's been absolutely amazing. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.